Mr. President, we're working here on the floor of the Senate to encourage a strong economic recovery, but it still remains clear that too many Americans are unable to find work. And we know that small businesses are the real job engines in our economy, so I'm particularly pleased that the Senate is right now debating a small business lending bill. And I rise today because I'd like to further improve the bill through an amendment that would take a simple step to safely increase lending to small businesses. And we do that, Mr. President, namely by getting government out of the way so that credit unions can increase their small business loan portfolios. Today, in every single state in the United States, there are credit unions that have cash on their balance sheets, and they're ready to responsibly loan more money. And there are many worthy small businesses, communities across our country, in Illinois and in Colorado, that need the loans. But federal law currently prohibits credit unions from fully helping our entrepreneurs. And especially in this economy, Mr. President, we need to change that. Small business expansion, we know, is going to be what pulls us out of this recession. Small businesses have always been the job engine of our economy. In the last 15 years, small businesses have generated nearly 2/3 of all new jobs created in our country, and they currently employ more than half of all Americans. And I've traveled across Colorado this year, last year, as you have, Mr. President. I've constantly visited with scores of small business owners, and they continually ask me, where is the lending? I thought the banks were supposed to start lending again. You've heard this, I've heard this, I think every senator in the chamber's heard this. But despite remaining profitable, small businesses have been unable to secure the loans that they need to make investments in inventory, expand, and ultimately hire new workers. And that's why I'm introducing this amendment to allow credit unions to ramp up their small business lending without, Mr. President, costing taxpayers a single dime. Now, back in December of last year, I was joined by Senators Snowe, Schumer, Lieberman, Boxer, Collins, Bennett of Colorado, our Majority Leader Reed of Nevada, Specter, Bill Nelson, Sanders, and Gillibrand in introducing the Small Business Lending Enhancement Act. And the bill would have increased lending for small businesses by lifting the arbitrary cap on credit unions' small business loans. Mr. President, why is that a problem, or why is that a cause of concern? Well, right now, credit unions are required to limit their small business lending to 12.25% of their total assets. But many credit unions have run up against that cap, and the only thing that is keeping them from jump-starting their local economies is an outmoded law that I just acknowledged. So after introducing our bill last year, we heard from scores of banks who were concerned about the safety and soundness of allowing credit unions to increase their small business loan portfolios. Now, I realize that dealing with banks and credit unions can be like injecting yourself between the Hatfields and the McCoys. But I feel so strongly about helping small businesses and helping unlock credit markets that I'm willing to take some lumps in the process. So I've gone back to the banks, listened to their concerns, and we went to the drawing board. I spoke to the Senate Banking Committee, the Treasury Department, and even the credit union's own regulator, the National Credit Union Administration, to see if there was something that we could all agree on. That work's paid off, which is why I'm proud to introduce a new compromise that will safely and soundly increase small business lending by credit unions without costing Americans a dime. And best of all, this legislation could lead to large-scale job creation in my home state of Colorado and all around our great country. So if the members would indulge me, I'd like to explain what's in the compromise. In response to questions about the safety and soundness of allowing credit unions to expand their small business lending all at once, our new proposal institutes strict eligibility criteria. Under this amendment, a credit union must first be well capitalized. Second, have offered small business loans for at least the last 5 years. Third, prove they have sound underwriting and strong historical management practices. And fourth, show that they've been running up against their previous loan cap. Credit unions then meet all those strict criteria. They then go to the NCUA, their regulator, and apply to increase their small business lending. And then when they're approved, Mr. President, that cap would increase slowly from the current 25% to a maximum of 27.5%. And even that transition would be overseen by regulators to ensure that it's done in a measured and prudent fashion. Nobody, Mr. President, could argue that this is irresponsible. I would challenge anybody to tell me that this isn't a sound and surefire way to grow our economy by increasing credit unions' capacity to lend to small businesses. The Credit Union National Association estimates that these sensible reforms would increase small business lending by over $10 billion a year, within the, including, and let me talk about Colorado, and an increase of $200 million in my home state of Colorado. And this new access to credit is predicted conservatively to produce more than 100,000 new jobs nationwide. Now, I think everybody would agree that this is the sort of pro-business, pro-jobs policy that we need. The small business community, led by the National Small Business Association, the National Association of Realtors, and even chambers of commerce like Texas's, have even gotten behind our effort and are now asking the Congress to pass this important provision. We all know what shape our economy is in today. Small businesses continue to struggle to access credit as large banks have significantly cut back on Main Street lending. Mr. President, you've been here the last 18 months, and you've noted, I know, that the 22 banks that received the most funding through the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP, actually cut their collective small business loan balances. And then America's community banks, which by and large didn't receive any federal bailout funds, are still struggling to fill that Main Street credit vacuum that was created by these large financial institutions. We need to do better. Small businesses are counting on us all across our country. I mentioned earlier, we've all met business owners. And one Coloradan that I was particularly compelled by is Stacy Hammond. Stacy's a small business owner in Thornton, Colorado, who started her own business, the First Street Salon. And initially, she went to a bank, only to be turned away because credit was in short supply, not because of any problem with her credit history. So Stacy turned to make her dream come true to her local credit union. And that credit union granted her a loan. It was a second mortgage on her home. And since that time, her salon's become even more successful. I visited her business. I was impressed. She'd hired more workers. She created real American jobs. And her story is a shining example of the economic expansion that awaits us if we'll increase the amount of lending that credit unions can undertake. Another Coloradan, because this is about real people who are eager to build their businesses, is Lisa Herman. She emailed me a story about a loan she secured from a credit union to expand her business. Her business is called Happy Cakes Bake Shop. It's in the Highland Square area of Denver. And she's been in business since 2007. And despite a really tough economy, her revenue has been up by about 25% since the summer of 2008. She's booking over 200 weddings a month, and her retail operations expanded to the point that she needed to build her operations and move into a new shop. Her traditional bank lender couldn't expand her credit, but her local credit union could, Mr. President. And she went on as expanded her business, spent more jobs and more business for her community. That's really the American way, is it not? So as I begin to close, Mr. President, some would have you believe that this is about banks or credit unions. I mentioned the Hatfields and the McCoys earlier, but it's really about small businesses. It's not about the banks, not about the credit unions. It's really about small business. And in this kind of a climate, we can't turn away entrepreneurs like Stacy and Lisa. And I doubt that there's a single member of this United States Senate who wants to look a small business owner in the eye that couldn't get a loan because of an arbitrary government cap on small business lending. We all have an enormous responsibility to do all we can to unlock credit markets for small businesses in Colorado and across our country. This amendment is an important part of that effort. I look forward to working with all 99 of my colleagues to move this amendment, to add it to this important small business lending package and allow our nation's small businesses to again set our country on a path toward job growth and future prosperity.